Hello and welcome to the Asylum. I am your host, Don, and with me, as almost always, is Jeremiah.
I watched this movie.
It's
It
oh,
put me to sleep though.
that reminds me. Did you catch the line that made me groan so hard that I think I bruised a rib?
I didn't figure that one out. I was forcing myself to stay awake. I drank a monster.
Oh, we'll get there. So,
I drank a monster energy drink to stay awake, and I'm not allowed to drink those. And then I passed out as soon as it was done. Like after it was done, I just fell on my bed and slept.
Monster is low key, man. Monster is only 180 milligrams per can. That's weak sauce. You need to get yourself some rain.
No,
Rain,
I am banned from drinking energy drinks because I used to start speaking chipmunk.
rain, 300 milligrams of caffeine. 300. When I was working a lot more than I am right now on a submarine, I was drinking 3 of those a day and a cup of coffee.
That's like the
Minimum.
kids. There's kids who show up at my school with bags of like 6 monsters or rock stars, and they drink 3 of them before school. I'm like, you guys are gonna have very expensive pee.
You don't need 3 monsters. You need one rain.
Yes,
Or
but 12-year-old kids shouldn't be drinking energy drinks. Period. It says so on the bottle. Let alone
or,
6 of them in a day.
or if you're working out, bang. Bang, because of the creatine in it, gives you a lot of energy. However, if you aren't working out regularly, the creatine will cause you to hold water weight. And so you'll
It's
actually
like
get fat.
ginseng that also gives you energy for that, and it gives you ginseng, which helps other things rise. But you can tell we're very interested in this movie because we watched Bullet Train Down,
Bullet train down. Yeah.
which which is a mockbuster from 2022's Bullet Train by David Leitch, which we also saw. And there are trains in both of them.
True. They both
One of
have
which
bullet.
is an American train, which I guess is a novelty because a bullet train in America would be a novelty because we don't have good trains. And the other one's an Asian train, which Asian trains are awesome.
True.
Because they like them, and it completed and Bullet Train Down.
America, as a first world country, leads the way in so many things. One of those things is most definitely not public transport.
It's because we don't have as much Thomas the Tank Engine love, and if we had more Thomas the Tank Engine love, we would have better trains.
That's true. Got a diesel. Anyway.
So Bullet Train Down is essentially Speed on a train.
It's kind of Speed on a train.
Speed 2 on a train.
But also Air Force One.
I'd say it's closer to Speed 2, because Speed 2 is the one on the boat, right?
On the cruise ship, yeah.
It has the cruise ship crash into the dock at the end and just...
Yep. So, yeah.
That's actually a legit amazing shot that they did, because they actually built a boat to crash into the dock, and they did, because this movie's not cool in that way at all. And essentially, it's a maiden run of a bullet train that is rigged to go if it's below 200 miles an hour, but there's also lines in here that they're only going 150. I'm like, you guys need to have your script cleaned up.
250. They say 250, which is a thing that bothered me because when the train leaves, they're like, the train will arrive in San Francisco.
Yeah, going to San Francisco
in 95 minutes. So that's like, okay, so we have a time limit, 95 minutes.
Which is almost how long as most Asylum movies are.
Yeah, right. So then they get a phone call. The guy who owns the train, who's riding it for its maiden voyage, which makes sense, gets a phone call telling them there's bomb on the train is going to blow up if they go below 200 miles per hour. Okay, and then he proves that he's not full of crap. However,
well, he hangs up at first, and then the guy starts calling everyone else's phone.
The train is not going 200 miles per hour. The train's going 250 miles per hour. So let's do some quick maths here. If you're going 250 miles per hour, it's going to take you 90 minutes to get from one location to another location. You have set yourself a 90-minute timeline, right? However, your speed limit on the lower end is 200 miles per hour. Why would you not slow the train to 201 miles per hour and buy yourself an extra 30 minutes?
Heck, later on they have this train going way faster because they don't know what they're doing.
That's issue number one I have with this. Issue number two, we get introduced to the 7 people that are riding this train.
That, mind you, never seem to interact with each other. They're clearly filmed. This group is in this set at this time. This group is in this set at this time. And they never are in the same room except for one character.
One character, yeah, the black guy.
And
so it says 7. I think it is 7 characters. I pulled that number out of my butt.
Yeah, it's about 7. About 7.
The random chick's boyfriend or brother, unsure.
I think they're brother.
I don't know.
They clearly don't have 100 below 0 chemistry, but they...
the main character, who is a former Army, or was he Marine?
I think Army, and he's been in. We've seen him before more than once. He was in War of the Worlds: Annihilation. He hasn't been in a ton of stuff, but we have seen him.
Yeah.
Here's Patlin.
So we got main character, former Army. The dude sitting across from main character, former Army, who's a teacher, and obviously, spoiler alert, is the bad guy. The owner of the train, the owner of the train's assistant, and the person driving the train. Those are our 7 characters that we get. There are some extras in this. There's one random black woman whose only line is to say they're coming after the train has stopped and the police and fire department are showing up. She is nowhere else in the whole movie. She's just there for that one line.
Oh, the editing in this movie is all over. There is a scene where the train is entering into San Francisco, and then it cuts to a random police car in the desert.
Just right across
which is
the desert.
Not San Francisco. And this movie does have Tom Sizemore, who looks very unhealthy.
Yeah.
Very unhealthy. And the weird thing is, I thought this was his last movie because it looks like it's probably his last movie, and I know he did an Asylum movie after he died. When he died earlier this year. But, unfortunately for him, after this movie, he did Battle for Pandora. He did Bermuda Island.
Oh.
He did The Haunting of Hellhole. He did Mega Ape. And he has 25 more things.
He was probably pulling a Raul Julia.
Or a Bruce Willis.
Yeah, where he knew he was going, so he wanted to stock as much money as he.
But he looks very unhealthy in this movie. He just looks.
Unlike Raul Julia, who gave us the phenomenal M. Bison in the horrible Street Fighter movie.
But for me, it was a Tuesday.
To me, it was a Tuesday. Such a great line. Anyway, such a great line for such a bad movie. Which
I'd rather watch that than anything in this movie because. So they basically have the black guy, played by Rashod Freelove, who we've seen before. He's a Marine who basically knows how to do all. He's a demolitions. He disarmed bombs. What was that movie called that made everyone see Jeremy Renner that won a Academy Award about bomb squads in Iraq? I can't remember, but he is basically disarmed with bombs, and he finds the first bomb and realizes it's a dummy, which means there's another bomb on the train somewhere, which involves him going on top of the train, which people are like, there's no way you survive on there because the train's going 250 miles an hour. And my brain goes, well, so is he, so technically speaking, as long as he doesn't
There's still going to be wind resistance.
I know, but as long as he knows what he's doing, saying blow the gun, which he does, and he does a weird duct tape thing that the more I thought, I'm like, I think that actually would add traction. I mean, to your hand.
It would.
And he didn't use the sticky side out, which I think was very smart of him. It would make his hands all sweaty and hurt, but I think that was at least a smart sounding thing that they did.
Yeah, he's tried. You gotta give him credit for trying. But when we get introduced to our characters, right, we have brother and sister, maybe. We have former
do nothing
military.
In this movie. Zero things they do in this movie.
Besides get glass in her arm. We have the.
And I'm not 100% sure how glass gets in her arm because then he fixes the window with duct tape.
Yes, and also, why are there blinds on that window?
And how does duct tape fix broken glass?
All good questions. Anyway, when we get introduced, I thought that this was really good foreshadowing by Asylum. I have to give him kudos for it. I messaged you about it. But when we get introduced to our main character initially, he's sitting down reading The Red Badge of Courage. And then the school teacher character sits down next to him and starts trying to engage him in conversation, which you should never do when somebody's reading, but whatever. But the fact that he was reading Red Badge of Courage.
Well, the Marine guy is a school teacher too. He left the Marines and became a high school teacher.
Yeah, that's right. He was a school teacher. The other guy was a computer specialist in IT.
Yeah.
But he engages him in conversation, and it's really cool. He's reading Red Badge of Courage because of the what Red Badge of Courage is about. So he kind of already tells us this guy's probably got PTSD. And then when the first bomb goes off, we see that he does in fact have PTSD. So that's cool. And then he fights through it. He becomes the main character, and then when they get the last bomb off of the train, that's when we find out that the lady driving the train has been the villain all along, and she tries to escape the train via parachute.
And the plane hits her. There's no way a fighter jet would hit her. They wouldn't be flying that low. They would not be buzzing a train. And if a fighter jet hit a parachute like that, it would go down. And that would be $50 million or more gone. They wouldn't do it. Also, if you have 90 minutes of a train going from point A to point B, there is 0%. I've seen Unstoppable. If you know that movie with Denzel Washington and Chris Pine, where the train that they couldn't stop. You can get someone on that train who can do stuff.
Yes.
And not just rely on the control room back home, which gets locked out. You could straight up get demolitions people on that train.
I do want to point out that the lady who was working in the control room, she was kind of hot.
Yeah. And throughout this entire movie, they're detaching cars because one of them just straight up blows up. They're detaching cars, waiting for them to get picked up. But yes, police and emergency people would probably be following this thing like crazy because if anything detaches, they need to get them out of there. But why in the world would they not have gotten some sort of response squad on that train?
Yeah, right. They talk about doing that, but then the guy climbs up on the top and takes the bomb off.
They had 90 minutes. 90.
I did forget to mention another character that was on the train that I forgot about. The reporter, who
uses a $20 ring light from Walmart to interview a billionaire at a big event.
Yes, and who does absolutely nothing else, but who looks like you could use her jaw to cut glass, which I thought was impressive.
So, first of all, they follow this train, and yes, it's a bullet train, but you don't need to follow a train with fighter jets. The FBI does not scramble fighter jets, typically speaking, for a train. They have helicopters for that.
Turns out it can only go in one direction, and you know exactly where it's going. I'm just gonna put that out.
Well, if it's a rail, if it's a straight rail, it probably just goes back and forth between the two places, so that makes sense. But why would they scramble fighter jets for a train? Wouldn't they have helicopters? Or drones? This is a 2022 movie.
Why didn't they do any of the things that they did? Anyway, so pilot lady gets eaten by a plane, and then we get the big reveal that the IT guy actually,
who's been very silent throughout most of this movie,
who legitimately was actively helping the main character to disarm the bombs.
Yep.
So, like, clearly, Asylum was like, oh crap, we only have a 70-minute movie. We need to fill in the last 20 minutes. And thus, we get the plot twist that the guy who's been helpful the entire movie, the second most useful character in the movie, is in actuality the bad guy. And he is trying to kill specifically only the main character, but decided to do it via bullet train explosion because that guy got bad intel during the war that resulted in the IT guy's brother dying.
And a lot of other people, but they straight up say it was bad intel. It's on them, which if the military is straight up saying that, it was really bad intel because they don't admit to mistakes pretty typically.
So then we get like an epic fight that is absolutely terrible. And then we get the line that hurt me to my core.
Oh, that late in the movie.
Which was, whilst they're fighting, the guy who owns the train can control the train from his phone, and he opens the door to the cabin, to the outside, and then he says, "Off my train!" And then the guy gets kicked out the door.
Oh, that line.
It hurt me so bad. Right here.
And then the bit that most people's comments. So I watched this on YouTube, and the comment section is always hilarious. The ending, which I would say the end of this movie is the only time where they kind of parallel the movie It's Mockbusting, involving a train crash that people walk away from somehow. Makes more sense in the real movie because that movie is what it is. This one does not, though I will say this train is better than Snakes on a Train.
That's fair.
And they were on some sort of set that looks like a train. It's probably one of those train safety demo sets like they have for planes and so on, where they can use them. Smaller location probably helped, though you can definitely tell there's only like 4 seats and they just filmed them in reverse repeatedly. Somehow a guy at the end escapes a pretty brutal crash that crashed in the city of San Francisco, which definitely would have caused a lot of damage. And that billionaire would have lawsuits galore for the rest of his life.
But he gets free train rides for life.
On a train that will never run again because it'll be sued into oblivion. And I'm pretty sure the, what's it called? The Transportation Authority, or whatever it's called, is not going to let that train function again.
Oh yeah, definitely not. But you forgot the most important thing, which is that after that epic line, and that guy gets kicked out of the train, and you see him fly out of the train in very bad special effects, turn sideways, and jettison in the other direction. They still had 10 minutes left in this movie. So he somehow gets back on the train and continues to fight the main character for another 5 minutes because they just had to hit that hour and a half.
The editing is all over the place, which there is no one good in this movie, but I will say there's no one hilariously bad acting wise that is just like ugh, like we've had.
I'm not joking. I rewound it, right? When he shows back up to fight him again, I was like, wait a second. This dude flew off of a train. So I rewound it to see what happened. And I'm not joking. He, like, the doors here, it pops open. He flies out, turns sideways, and flies away. And yet, somehow, winds up inside of the pilot car in the front.
And mind you, this is a train that they've already detached nearly every car from. Almost every car's already been detached by this time.
Okay, but yeah, so there's no bad acting in this movie, but there's no stellar acting in this movie. So this isn't one of those movies where like you can just mock the acting in it and be like, oh, this is worth it. No. There's, aside from the fact that it is a more accurate remake of the original Bullet Train.
From the 70s, mind you. Japanese 70s, not the comic book one that came out last year. That this is mockbusting.
Yes. Aside from the fact that it's a fairly accurate remake, there's nothing redeeming about this movie. It's not bad. It's not good. It's too long, which is saying something for Asylum.
This felt like it should be an episode of 24 or something. One episode.
Yeah, like a 45-hour long movie, you know?
45 hours?
No.
45 minutes to an hour.
Minute to an hour.
No,
45
that's
hours
a lot of padding. That's like Amtrak the movie. We're going to DC. We're recording the entire thing live. But the writer of this movie, he did do another Asylum movie that I am curious about, just knowing how this movie is. Because he did one that came out the year before called Airline or Sky Battle. About Russian terrorists that take over an airplane and then they have to battle it from another airplane to try to retake the plane before it hits a nuclear power plant by the capital.
All right.
You know you want to see that.
So on our constantly sliding tier of Asylum films, this is down there. I would put it around Monster area, and I hate to keep bringing Monster up because Monster had the opportunity to be a legitimately good movie, and the only thing that made it bad was the Shaco vision.
You might vomit while watching it.
Exactly, Monster should have been way higher on our list, but it's down in that area. It's not great. It's not good. It's not bad, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody ever. Sure, thoughts?
Yeah, this movie put me to sleep. I was very tired. And
man.
And it's not long at all. I spent a lot of time watching the comment section because it was more entertaining. Actually, the comment section on YouTube for most of these movies is entertaining, especially how many people are like, oh yes, a legitly awesome movie. I'm like, what are you watching? Like, Nazis at the Center of the Earth also had the same thing where you'd be like, this is awesome. Way better. Like, that one legitimately, you could have considered that one better than, what was it called? Iron Sky. Because the type of movie Iron Sky is. But, like, are you watching the same thing? But the comment section never fails me, especially when they refer to the Nazi Center of the Earth as a documentary and people just ran with that label. Because of course you should. It's just not. It's not a good movie. It wasn't painful to watch it though. It just made me sleepy because this is like the type of movie that if it was on, I might watch it for a little bit and then I'd be like, I'm bored. I'm turning this off.
Yeah, like I said, not great. Not really something I would recommend. If you're looking to watch an Asylum movie, go watch like World War II.
Though, if you want to watch the one it's based off of, Bullet Train, that is a crazy movie that it's really hard to describe it. Think about it. If John Wick, it's by the guy who did John Wick, if John Wick had a lot more Japanese influence and drank some of those energy drinks that you talked about at the beginning,
Right.
like injected it into his vein and had an acid trip on a train
Yeah.
in Japan.
The movie that this was mockbusting, Bullet Train, 2022, Brad Pitt, very strongly reminded me of like classic Guy Ritchie.
Hmm.
So if you like Guy Ritchie films, take that, but instead of putting it in England, put it in Japan on a train and make it
With
feel
English people.
with English people and make it feel way more Japanese. And that'll give you Bullet Train, which I would recommend. Very enjoyable. Free on Netflix.
And yeah. Well, let's see what this wheel of pain and torture is going to make us watch next.
Wheel of Pain and Torture is an actual medieval device.
Probably a real movie made by the Asylum.
What? Wheel of Asylum, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the movie that we will burn.
There's 156 movies left on here.
We're getting there, man. Ooh, The Hitchhiker. That sounds interesting. Let's see here.
Do your duty. Find whatever movie this is. We all
My
know
duty.
Asylum's history of horror is
We don't even
spotty.
know this could be a delightful Christmas movie for all we know.